Welcome back to another edition of the Wolff Den. I'm Matt Wolff, founder of Ticket Time Machine. Today we welcome Chris Dalla Riva to the show. Welcome to the Den.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation about music and data and everything else. We're both from New Jersey, so maybe we'll talk about New Jersey a little bit. But for the people in the audience who don't know who you are, just give us a quick intro.
Yeah, my name is Chris Dalla Riva. I work for Audiomack, which is a music streaming service. It's more in the vein of, say, SoundCloud, in that people could upload music directly to the platform. And it's tremendously popular in Africa and the Caribbean. In a lot of countries in Western Africa, we're the most popular streaming service. Outside of work, I'm a musician. I record my own music. I play in a bunch of bands. And I write a newsletter called Can't Get Much Higher that I bill as the intersection of music and data, because that's sort of what I do with my day job. I work on the data side of the streaming service. That's me.
You're a data nerd, which is not a bad thing. People love, but also a music junkie. It's at the intersection of both of them. I assume the music came first.
Yeah, totally. I always say to people, the data stuff is cool. I've always liked math and statistics, but at the end of the day, I just love good songs. And that's what with the people that I work with at Audiomack, that seems to be the thing that drives everybody. People love music. They love going to shows. They love making music. I started playing the guitar probably when I was in 5th or 6th grade, and I was immediately interested in writing my own songs and recording. I lived in Boston for a while. I played in bands up and around there, and now I live back in Jersey. I still play pretty actively. I'm usually out playing at least once or twice a month, so that's definitely the ultimate driving force. But it's hard to pay the bills as a musician, so working in the industry is a good compromise.
What type of music does your band play?
So I'd say the music that I make is more in like the indie rock vein. The one band I play with, it's my cousin's band. It's a punk band, so sort of, loud, fast music. I play bass in that band. But I'm sort of willing to play whatever as long as the people are nice and it's fun. But yeah, definitely in the rock arena is where most of the music that I make sits.
You're mostly playing original songs then, not necessarily cover songs.
Correct. I'll do cover gigs sometimes. It's a lot of work to learn 4 hours of covers, so I try to stick to more of the original stuff. But if an opportunity arises, just a couple weeks ago, my one cousin and I played an acoustic cover gig where we played for a couple hours at a popular bar. That was fun. So, if the opportunity arises, but I'm definitely more in the original space.
But you're a writer, so that writing songs, that makes sense. Me personally, and I think it feels like it's probably harder to get jobs and gigs with original music when people don't know who you are. I'll pretty much go see any cover band as long as I know they're going to be playing songs that I like. So how has that affected the stuff that you play and the places?
Yeah, the cover space is much more active, especially around where I live. I feel like every bar, restaurant, you could go there, there's some dude in the corner playing an acoustic guitar. And there's certainly at the low level, more money in that space. If I wanted to make money just playing music, I would definitely focus a lot of my efforts on that, because there is good money in that, especially if you get into like the wedding band sphere. There are still a couple venues in and around New York City that do original music. Definitely smaller, a lot more places either have cover bands or DJs.
Yeah.
But yeah, the good thing is I have a full-time job, so I don't have to worry about
for the love of the game.
Yeah, exactly. So I could play at every dingy basement that I want to, and it's not going to affect paying my rent every month, which is nice. I feel like if I were to at some point have made a full go at being a professional musician. It could have taken some of the love out of it, but I've luckily never had to do that.
And you're also, I'm going to talk a lot about, your day job. You know a lot about the business of music, and that probably would take a little bit out of the love of trying to do that for a living as well. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of those things where they say, like, you don't want to know how the sausage is made. I feel like the music industry is a little bit like that. Of course, there's tons of good, well-meaning people who want to make artists and the industry better, but like every industry, there's a lot of crap you have to deal with to make it. And it's hard. I see why it's hard for artists out there. I don't think it's ever been a walk in the park, but seeing it from the other side is definitely eye-opening.
Is it harder now? I mean, you're younger and newer to this, but do you believe it's harder now for someone who's not known to do well than maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago with maybe the people you've talked to or what you've looked into?
So it's certainly a controversial question. And I think,
by the way, we're gonna have a few of them here. That's
okay.
But feel free to share whatever you can. Obviously, you got work stuff. We that stuff that maybe you can't share or talk about, and that's fine too.
Yeah, I think it was hard, and how hard it's been is there's probably some equivalent over time, but it was very different what was hard about it. In 1970, if I was in a band, I couldn't really record myself. There were really these gatekeepers that you had to get through, and appealing to those people and getting them to agree to record you, mass produce your record, and distribute it to record stores was really, really hard. Now, recording and distribution costs have gone
way down,
way down. I bought Logic Pro, which is a really popular recording software, for like $200, one-time purchase. And through DistroKid, you can distribute your music to every streaming service on earth for like $20 a month.
So the barrier to entry is not much these days.
Yes. So, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think democratizing music is good, that you don't have to deal with those gatekeepers. But at the same time, there is so much music out there. I mean, on Audiomack alone, we're getting hundreds of thousands of uploads every week. To be able to, in Spotify and the bigger streaming services, it's even more. I've seen a stat. It's like in a matter of a week, Spotify will ingest more music than was released in like a calendar year in the 1980s. It's really hard to cut through that noise. It is. There's just so much. There's so much stuff. So, it was.
That brings us. Sorry, that'll bring us to the second controversial question. I actually was on the call when you joined Tom Truitt and the smartest people in the room, and I don't know if it was my question or someone else's. I might have chimed in. Is there too much music out there? Is another problem that I think people have. What's good? What's bad? That's obviously. That's a matter of opinion. I think there's a lot of terrible music out there, and there's probably people who think some of the stuff that I listen to is terrible. There's so many options. How do you get noticed? When there is, you mentioned, there's pay for play, right? A lot of the people who are getting the airtime are the who are backed by people who are paying to get the airtime. But how do I discover new music? For me, I look at my Amazon Music and I see what's out new, and I go to the new songs, and maybe I know a quarter of the bands.
It's certainly an age-old question, and it's especially become even crazier now because of, like you said, just how much music is out there. But again, I go back and forth. It's like there's so much music, we have a lot of access to it. Like, if I told someone in 1980 for $10 a month, you could have access to every piece of recorded music ever. I mean, they literally wouldn't believe it. Digging through all that is hard. I mean, there are a few. I feel like I still find most music that's recommended to me through friends, through like music writers that I like to read. But also, most streaming services have some functionality that I think is helpful. Whether some algorithmic recommendation sections are able to surface good stuff. Also, on a lot of services, we have this on Audiomack. Spotify does it. If you follow an artist, you'll have a feed of all of their new releases that come through. I mean, it's hard to discover music. It's hard to cut through. And if I had the answer to that, I'd be a world famous musician and not waxing on about the music industry. So I sadly don't have a complete answer to that. But, I think people discover music in similar ways that they always did. I think about my younger sister when she's in college. It's like when I ask her what she's listening to, it's just, oh, someone told me about this, which was the same thing when I was in college. But the means of listening is just different, and the access we have is different. So if someone tells you you should check out this band, rather than having to think about spending $15 on a CD, I could open up Spotify and give it a test. Whether that's good or bad, I mean, you could argue about, but I tend to fall on the side that, the democratization of creator tools and access to music and wider access to music is a good thing. But there are tons of consequences for both of those.
Yeah. I'm under the opinion that if you're talented enough, people will find you. I think that's probably really relevant in sports, right? If you're a good enough basketball player, baseball, whatever, someone's going to find you. I'm not sure that the best musicians and all of these and writers have been found. Do we see this stuff on, like, I don't watch most of this, but American Idol and The Voice, right? I mean, there's so many people who have ridiculously good, they're ridiculously talented, and they don't make it for whatever reason that is. Do you think that? Do you share that opinion?
I mean, there's certainly, like, and there's always been tremendous amounts of luck required to, Taylor Swift, I think, is very talented, but to become what Taylor Swift is, I mean, along the way, you have to get lucky at certain levels. I would like to believe that talented people will eventually build an audience. I can't guarantee that. And I don't think that is always the case. The most talented people in music don't always come out on top, because unlike sports, there's like not objective metrics to be like, oh, this is the best music. I mean, if you can run 100 meters in a certain number of seconds, someone will find you and put you in a race. The metric that the mainstream music industry has is like, how big is your audience? And that is the thing. It doesn't matter how good or bad your music is. If you can get people to come out to shows, if you can sell merch, somebody will give you a record deal. And in a way, artists are more in control of that than ever before. You can build an audience online and end up with a big record contract. But because of that, artist development isn't what it was decades ago. You're not going to have a label sign someone, I don't know, Mariah Carey or Whitney Houston, who's really talented, but they don't have an audience, and then build that audience with them. Labels seem to wait for you to have built an audience yourself and then capitalize on, pour gasoline on the fire once it's already burning, to make you bigger than ever before.
That doesn't seem to have shifted the power to the artist, which you would think it would have, right? I have the audience, I have the material, as opposed to the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I think artists are. There was actually, I don't know what the conference was, but the CEO of Sony Music, he was saying that artists are more powerful than they've ever been. They have more leverage, which I do think is the case. But the music industry is still a highly, highly concentrated business. There's effectively 3 labels: Sony, Universal, and Warner. that control a large majority of the music that you're going to listen to, new and old. So they're still able to leverage that in ways that single artists can't really compete with. So I think artists are more powerful than they have been ever before. But still, I mean, it's still hard to compete with these humongous multinational entities. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk data. That's what you do now. Tell us what is the data that you're looking for in the music world for Audiomack?
Yeah. So I do some boring data, some fun data stuff. I mean, like, for example, I help process what music was getting listened to on the platform and how much, send that off to the labels, and then we pay out royalties, and then they distribute that money. I mean, it's a sort of a boring, tedious task, but it keeps things moving. I also do a lot of stuff with building internal tools for our curators, so they can see how is the music that we're adding to playlist performing. And we also try to do some music discovery. Like, we want to find that hot up and coming artist who's sitting in their bedroom uploading their first song ever before anybody else does, because we want to have a relationship with that artist, and we want them to feel like Audiomack has been there with them and given them the tools to succeed from the beginning. I mean, data touches basically our whole business. There are, like I said, that last part, like finding artists, I feel like that's like the sexy part of the job. But, there's more mundane things about making sure the your listening data is processed correctly, so we can surface more music to you that you might like. It really, that's I guess the fun and boring thing about working with data, is it touches everything, and everything includes, stodgy financial royalty reporting systems, and also more fun. Let's find the hottest new thing on the platform.
Is YouTube and TikTok, that's the new version of just seeing someone at a dive bar playing to 6 people, but now the audience is much bigger?
Yeah, for better or worse. I mean, like I said, that's good because, I could, long ago, I was limited to whoever was playing in my area. Now, if I want to get into Albanian rap, I could just type in a few words on YouTube, and there's probably thousands and thousands of songs to listen to. I think downstream there are some bad social effects from that, in that, previously you had to leave your home to do this. We live in a very on-demand culture, but it's not just music streaming, but, video streaming, DoorDash, where you could get a bunch of stuff directly beamed into your home. And I think that can break down some social ties that are important, especially in the music community. But yeah, I mean, we see this all the time. It's some kid uploads a song in their bedroom, gets 100 million plays, and then some label signs them, and the kid has never performed live before, and suddenly it's like, all right, you sort of got to figure this out. Whereas decades ago, that really wasn't possible. I mean, you had to come up playing live to some degree. Some of those artists will go on to get live chops, others won't. But yeah, that's a big shift.
My first memory of that is Bo Burnham, who's a great comedian, writes some songs. I actually I like both some of his songs. And who else was out there on YouTube and back in the day that made it? I'm trying to remember. Was it Olivia Rodrigo? Did she make it start through YouTube?
So she was on
Black, maybe.
She was on Olivia Rodrigo, I know, was on Disney. Actually, Disney is one of the only entities that I think is still really good at developing like young stars. A lot of two big stars recently, Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter, both came out of the Disney machine. But Justin Bieber, if I recall correctly, was discovered on YouTube. Shawn Mendes, who is still pretty popular, he came up on the app Vine, that doesn't even exist anymore, which was like, the short form video app. There are like I mean, people launch legitimate long term careers through these avenues. I mean, there's no two ways about that.
We rely so much on data, and data, you can measure it, which means you can assign a dollar value to it. But are we too reliant on data? I like to talk about immeasurable data, which obviously can't be measured. And like you're telling me, go listen to someone, and I go listen to it. It's not tracked. So there's so much immeasurable data just by word of mouth. Do we rely too much on data? And I know that's a weird question to ask someone whose job is data, but do we?
I mean, funny enough, I feel like when I talk to anyone who works in data, those are the people that are more skeptical of the whole enterprise. Um, data, like you said, is really good for things that are easily quantifiable and trackable. But sometimes,
but can also be spun.
100%. There's an old saying, I think it's attributed to Mark Twain. He says, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. I mean, you can spin a statistic sort of however you want. And I think that's an important reason why, like, being numerate is important, so you're not as fooled by charts and graphs. But I think because statistics are really good at dealing with things that are easily quantifiable, it leads to a bias where we forget about things that are not quantifiable. Some of what you're talking about. But additionally, I mean, specifically in music, I can tell you, people, this song is like going crazy right now. Lots of comments, people are downloading it more than, the average song on Audiomack. If you put it on and you think it's horrible, I mean, I can't convince you of anything otherwise. There are labels and entities out there who don't care. It is purely a money-making business, and they will put you on tour. They will give you money because, again, if you have an audience, somebody will try to monetize it. But at the end of the day, especially like discovering new music, it still comes back to your ears. It has to be something that moves you. That's something that we can try to quantify, but it really isn't truly quantifiable. And, like I said, at the end of the day, I just love making music. When I pick up my guitar, I'm not really thinking about data in any way. I'm just thinking about what moves me and what I'm trying to express. So yeah, obviously I think data is really important. I mean, it's my job.
Well, it could be important, and we could rely too much on it too. I mean, there's not
totally.
Yeah.
No, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, both those things can exist at the same time, where we get overly quantifiable with things that don't require it.
You mentioned writing music. What moves you? What do you like to write about?
I find that, like a lot of people, I write about what's going on in my life, especially my relationships with people and other people that I observe. But I know some people are really good at writing about things that have nothing to do with them. I'm not as good with that. It definitely comes from what's going on inside my mind, which, right now I'm 29 years old. So it's all things that someone of that age, is dealing with and trying to navigate the world.
So I was going to say you're on the younger side. I become a collector of these things. I'm sure you know about them now because they've made a comeback. But I actually don't own a player. I just collect these because I'm nostalgic and I'm a collector. Love record store day. Go and pick up a few new records. What do you buy in the music world? Do you have 8-tracks? Do you still buy CDs or cassettes just because? Do you find record store day an intriguing thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, the music industry is super excited about vinyl right now because, exactly to your point, when they survey even young kids who are buying vinyl, it's like 50% of them don't own a record player. It's like you're buying a piece of memorabilia. It's more like merchandise, which I get. I mean, you could throw it up on the wall. You get this beautiful piece of art. You get the liner notes. I do have a record player. I'm definitely an old soul in that sense. There, like I said, I live in Hoboken. We got a record store right around the corner from where I live. When I used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I also just by chance lived around the corner from a record store. I don't have my apartment lined with vinyl. I probably have like 100 or so records, and I buy a lot of old used records that are like $1 that I just think are really
why not?
really strange. But yeah, I think the physical stuff that I buy is vinyl and merch, which is usually like T-shirts or something. I always tell people if you really want to support an artist, I mean those two things have really good margins for them. So if you're ever out at a show and you like what you're hearing, buy a T-shirt, buy a sticker, buy something.
Yeah, this was given to me. I don't buy a lot of shirts or hats from concerts. I just most of my stuff like that is sports.
Yeah, I mean it also it depends on what show you're going to. I mean, if you're going to a lot of like stadium shows, the merch prices there are sort of ridiculous. The way I always think about it, especially if I'm at like a small club or something, maybe there's 100 people there. Those are the artists that, buying a T-shirt definitely makes a difference for. If you buy, a shirt at a $50 sweatshirt at the Blink-182 tour, I'm sure that, it's not going to impact their bottom line that much if they're selling out the stadium.
Blink is okay. One of my favorite bands. Really glad that they were able to make amends and come back. They were good before I saw them with or without, but
yeah, no, I mean
much better with Tom.
Yeah, I was happy that they were able to get back together. I love a lot of their stuff.
What band would you like to get together? I mean, obviously Oasis is coming back. Is there a band out there that stopped playing? To me, there's so many good bands that just stopped, and I'm considerably older than you, but just back in the day. Is there any band that has stopped playing that you would love to see get back together?
Yeah, I mean, Oasis was the big one. I got tickets for my dad and I,
Okay.
sitting in I think we're sitting in literally the last row of Giant Stadium, but we will be there. And they weren't as expensive as I was expecting. I mean, we are sitting really, really far back. A few months ago, I did a little data analysis of which after Oasis got back together, of like which potential reunions would generate the most buzz, and I pulled some information on like among bands that were broken up, which had the most followers on Spotify and whatnot.
What'd you come up with?
So again, this is not necessarily something that interests me. The biggest one was One Direction, though the one member sadly just died. The other ones that were on the list were Daft Punk,
Okay.
who I don't know if they're technically broken up, but they haven't.
They played some show at the Super Bowl or something recently.
Yeah. And then a big one, I'd go crazy if Outkast got back together for a tour. I know Andre 3000's been doing his sort of solo jazzy stuff, so who knows if that'll ever happen.
I had tickets to see the Fugees and they canceled, I think, because of poor performance, but on the ticket sale. I would love to see them. For me, Hot Shell Ray, I never got to see them. I like their music. There's a band called the Badleys. Very long time ago, they played with like Edwin McCain and Sister Hazel. They broke up, and then I was lucky enough to see Fun, which I thought was doing great. I know they do. They got their solo album. Nate is doing his own thing, and then I think the other guy was in Bleachers, right?
Yeah, Jack Antonoff. He's in Bleachers, but he's also like a very sought after producer. I'll have to send you after the fact. I interviewed the guy who he co-wrote Tonight by Hot Shell Ray.
Yeah.
The other one, I mean, I'm a huge Jack White fan. I've seen him in concert probably 3 or 4 times. I would love if the White Stripes got back together, but I don't think that's ever going to happen because
So
Meg White, the drummer, doesn't seem to have any interest in performing. But
yeah, I think you get a lot. Like sometimes you just, if you get that one band member, it just doesn't. You can replace some people, and they'll try. Right, Linkin Park is doing it, and Foo Fighters, but there's some bands that you can't replace one of the guys, and I just think trying to is, and it's probably more lucrative for everyone to just kind of do their own thing. Maybe I get why someone's in a band and want to go solo, and especially these days, it's more lucrative than being in a band, possibly.
yeah, I mean, there are reasons these reunions happen. Is there's usually a lot of money in them, but part of the reason I think you see less bands today is that everything has to be. If you have a band with 5 members, I mean, you have to split everything. It's potentially more lucrative for you if you're build a career by yourself rather than having to split the profits 5 or 6 ways.
It's speaking of live shows, when I listen to music, there are some acts that I would go see live. I love them live, but I won't really listen to their stuff on the radio or on my iTunes. Do you get, is that the same way for you, or?
I 100% have experienced that where there's like I'm trying to think of an example. There's a punk band called Against Me, and I saw them open for this band, the Gaslight Anthem, that I'm a really big fan of. And I really loved the Against Me set. And then I just never listened to them again. And I'm always like, for no particular reason. I mean, I really enjoyed the show. I just never kept up with them after the fact. And I feel like I experienced that a lot, especially if I'm going to a show and I see like a small band. I'm like, oh, that was really awesome. And then for whatever reason, I don't end up keeping up with them. And then there are also, there are certain acts that are known for their live show, whose records I'm not as into. Just a couple of weeks ago, I ended up at this big benefit concert with a friend of mine for the hurricane relief in North Carolina, and it was like
awesome show.
It was. I thought we were just going to a Dave Matthews concert, but it was like Dave Matthews, Warren Haynes, Trey Anastasio from Fish. Oh my God, what's his
Country
name?
Eric Church, right, and Luke Combs.
Oh no, this was a different show. They did have
that was the Madison Square Garden show.
Yeah. So it was like very jam band heavy, but a lot of those bands they were unbelievable. But I'm not as interested in their studio output.
Yeah, did Dave play his hits or did he jam and play the deep cuts that his fans love? Because I've seen Dave 25 times, and I go to him here in South Florida, and he's always playing the jam songs. And I've seen him so much, but I don't know his music. I like his hits. I went to Ocean's Calling when he headlined a festival, the best show I've ever seen of him, because he played the songs that I want to hear. So it's just interesting the way the artists, I mean, most artists play the same songs all the time, but you get someone like Pearl Jam or Dave where the set list changes. What do you prefer as a fan going to a show?
I guess it depends how much I'm into the band. If I'm, only familiar with the hits, I definitely want to hear the hits. But I'm a big Springsteen fan. It's like when I go see Springsteen, I want to hear some obscure song, even though I know, I don't need to hear Glory Days live ever again or Dancing in the Dark live. But that's why a lot of people go out to the show. So I get why, that's played during the encore every night. When I saw Dave, it was like so many bands, so he actually didn't play for that long, and they were definitely jamming. They didn't play like Ants Marching or Crash Into You, whichever it's called, but they played 1 or 2 songs from the album in the 90s whose name I don't remember. That is it called Crash? Is it whatever Crash?
Yeah, Crash, but then there was Satellite. That might be earlier, Dave. I find myself looking at setlist.com too much. That's isn't it crazy how just everyone's set is just uploaded right there? Do you look at setlist when you go to a show? I find myself looking at it. I hate doing it, but I end up doing it anyway.
I try. I guess I try not to because I want a little bit of a surprise. Sometimes I'm definitely liable um, to take a peek beforehand. I last year I went to, or maybe was it 2 years ago? I don't know. Me and I went to see Taylor Swift with my sisters, and I'm not like a huge Taylor Swift fan, so I didn't have to hear every single song, but I definitely looked at the set list online to see when was the appropriate time to use the bathroom, especially if it was a song or songs I didn't care about, or go buy more beer. So I mean, I'm as liable as anybody else. I feel like shows are better when you just go
I
and enjoy the music.
I use I use it more for festivals to try and figure out, like, when I have to choose between artists, to try and figure out, am I going to be able to see the songs that I want to hear from those artists. I have a friend who we were driving up to a show, and he was playing that music in the order of the thing on the way to the show. I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. It reminds me of people playing the same music in the parking lot when I'm tailgating at a show. What do you think about that? Do you want to
Uh,
listen to it on the way up, or when you're tailgating, or do you like to? I almost will, if I'm going to see a show soon and it pops up on my phone. I'll, like, if it's within like 3 months or 2 months, I won't even listen to it. I'm like, let me move on, and because I'm going to be hearing it soon. I got some weird music quirks. Do you have
that's
any?
funny. I've actually never heard anyone say that before. I always feel like when people are going to a show, they want to
Yeah, they
brush
want
up
to.
on the
Yeah,
discography.
and the lyrics too. But I don't know. For some reason, I don't want to do that. That's. Do you have any weird, like, music quirks that people might think? The
I
type of
mean,
music, and I like everything basically, but
yeah, I mean, the whole music data thing is definitely a weird thing. Most people think of these the worlds of math and music as antithetical to one another. I've always found they've lived in harmony, to some degree. That's very strange. It's
do you
not.
find yourself using that outside of work a lot, like introducing the data and the statistics of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's how I think, I guess. I mean, the way I always think about it is, we can, especially related to music or other things, people can argue. You could argue about things till the end of days, and I find that people will argue about things that actually have like a knowable answer, if you're willing to just dig up some information. I mostly apply that to silly music debates, like which uh, which band getting back together would generate the biggest buzz.
Yeah.
You could at least weigh in on that. I mean, it's not a perfectly objective answer, but it's how, for better or worse, how my mind works.
What do you find is the most interesting statistic to talk about, or data set?
I think, in terms of music, the one thing that I end up talking about a lot is how music royalties work in the streaming age, because it's a highly contentious issue. But I think people have a lot of bad information about how it works, and it's not to say that the way it works is like this perfectly well thought out system. But if people want to improve it, like, you have to understand the painfully boring details about how the system is actually paid out. So, royalty data, I definitely talk about, a lot, more than your average person. Outside of outside of music specific data, one data set I like to mine a lot is Wikipedia. Wikipedia has like a lot of publicly available data. I'm always just fascinated, like, what people are looking up and how things are organized on there.
But
There's a lot of.
you can edit it. I mean, so it's not. It shouldn't be taken as fact, right?
No, definitely not. I mean, yeah, you can edit it. but not just, and I guess not just partially what's on the pages themselves is interesting, but also just like what people are trying to access on there, what they're looking at. But it is a crazy repository of information. A year or so ago, I originally did this piece about if country musicians were actually from small towns, and I used Wikipedia for this. It was like I was able to get like a list of country stars and then pull their Wikipedia pages, and on basically everyone's page they list like where they're from, and then you could cross-reference that with how big the town is. So we ended. I thought that was like a fun little thing, and the only reason I could do it is because Wikipedia, as people have taken the time for whatever reason to build these pages. So yeah,
Well, how many of them like whiskey too?
Also a good question. Yeah, there's a lot. That's a cool data set. Just a cool. I mean, I like publicly available information. It's good for the data community. So Wikipedia is a good source.
So much of it now, which is good and bad, powerful, dangerous. There's many. You could look at it a lot of different ways, but there's a lot. It's only going to get more, and it's going to get more organized. So how does that change data and music in the next year or 5 years? What do you think is going to be the real change?
I think one of the biggest things we're going to be dealing with is in the last year or so, there have been all these AI related products have launched. The big ones like ChatGPT, but in the music space, there have been some of these AI generated music companies that have cropped up. The most popular one right now is called Suno. And the way, I'm not an expert in this, but I know the way all this works partially is they just scrape a bunch of publicly available data from the web. They shove it all into a model, and I'm sure there's lots of computer programming involved that I don't understand. But the way they built a lot of that stuff is based around publicly available information, and I think we're going to
YouTube. I mean, YouTube. You can find anything on YouTube. That's open source in a way.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think we're going to see. But I think we'll see a lot of these things that were once anyone could access are going to be like either made impossible to access or put behind paywalls because they don't want these random AI firms training models on the data on their sites, which is, I understand the perspective. It's a shame because, like I said, at least for me, a lot of that data is interesting and valuable, especially if you're not I'm not monetizing it in any way when I poke around all this data, but I understand where these companies are coming from, and I think we're going to see things become a little bit more closed off out of fear that data from websites, whether YouTube or Reddit, is going to be taken without their consent.
And that just makes it more expensive for us to access music?
Possibly. I mean, the music industry is really concerned about price. The industry hasn't really raised streaming prices in like 10 or 15 years, whereas video streaming services have just gone up and up and up, and music
it's cheap
to
listen to music, to access music.
It's so cheap. Accounting for inflation, it's cheaper than ever before because they never really raised prices.
There's got to be a point where people won't pay more. That's where some people always try and find that point. I don't know. I don't like just trying to find that point of the most that people will pay because there's so many ways to access music.
Yeah, I mean, alternatively, and this is part of what we have on Audiomack, we have a subscription tier, but we have an ad-supported tier. So if you don't want to pay for a subscription, I mean, you can still listen to music. You're just going to have to, suck down ads, because without that, then, you can't pay out artists and songwriters. So it's tough. I mean, people complain about how much artists make, but you also have listeners on the other side who aren't willing to pay more than a certain dollar amount for music. So it's a tricky balance we have to think about. I think we'll see prices go up in general. I don't think they'll end up going up that much because the music industry still has very vivid memories of everything that went on with Napster and LimeWire in the 2000s and how much revenue tanked at the time. But I think you'll see modest price increases, and you're also going to see them try to monetize music in other ways. There's talk constantly, and nothing's really launched, of like super premium tiers on streaming services where, all right, you can pay $10 for the regular streaming service, but if you want high fidelity audio and all these other bells and whistles, you could pay $20 a month or something. I think you're going to see more. You'll see streaming services play around with that more.
You're a guy. Would you pay for the premium?
I probably would. I mean, there are the way they conceive of it is, say in the year 2000, there were a lot of people who maybe would buy 1 or 2 CDs a year, but there were also people that would buy 50 CDs a year. Right now, all of those people are paying the exact same price for a streaming subscription. So the idea that's talked about is how can artists, labels, streaming services better monetize super fans or people who are willing to spend more on music, because for a lot of those people, there's not really another way in terms of listening. It's like you just pay this subscription price every month.
They're going to concerts, they're buying merch, they're buying a lot of stuff. How do you feel about lip syncing? It's a real pet peeve of mine. It's like I go to see someone perform, I want to hear them sing. I don't care about them dancing and how it'll. I think if you can't sing and have it sound good, then don't put it on television. Or what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, ultimately, if the audience doesn't care, then do whatever you want, I guess. I'm very much of the opinion that when I see someone live, I would actually like to see them perform live. That's sort of the whole point. I mean, if I wanted to listen to the record, I would just listen to the record. And when I go to a concert, I'm okay if you're going to change up the arrangement, if you're going to sound a little bit different, if it's going to be faster or slower or a little bit gruffer. I mean, to me, that's the point. And some people disagree with that. Some people want to hear a note for note rendition in a crowd. Okay, you can do that if you want, but that's not how I prefer to experience live music. I like it with all the warts and miscues and mess ups. It's like that's the human part of live music and music in general. It's not this pristine product that we can perfect in the studio.
That brings up another controversial topic, Counting Crows. Have you seen them live?
I haven't seen them live.
Okay, so Adam Duritz, he will sing these songs in a way different than you've ever heard it. He's like, it's like a separate performance. And I don't think it's terrible, but I just saw them and I want to hear Mr. Jones the way I hear it on there. It doesn't have to be perfect exactly like it because you're singing it live, but it should be able on tune. Almost like if you were going to sing at karaoke, you could follow along with it instead of you being way off with all of that stuff. That was a big deal for people. I don't mind people giving a little extra, a little something new in what they're performing. They're performers, right? I mean, that's performing artists. It's in the part of performing is. I think part of performing is kind of giving a role your own character to it.
Yeah, I mean, totally. There are some performers I've seen who do the same thing, as like every single song is completely reimagined. If I were going to a show and I wasn't expecting that, I'd probably be a little bit upset. if I was going in and knowing, like, it's like if you go see Fish or something, it's like every performance of every song is going to be completely unique. I think for me, it's about expectation. So I can see both sides of it. If I'm going there expecting, like, oh, I'm going to hear Mr. Jones or whatever, more or less how they did it on the record, and then they do some ska version of it, I'd probably be a little ticked off. But if I went in knowing that, I guess I would enjoy it more.
It's hit or miss with them, so you just kind of got to roll the dice. Tell me about can'tgetmuchhigher.com, your newsletter.
Sure. Yeah, I write I guess a bi-week, or comes out twice a week. I bill it as the intersection of music and data. Comes out Thursdays, so today, and Sundays. The Thursday edition is usually me just talking about something in the music industry, usually something, usually pulling some data related to that. And then on Sundays, I do something a little bit different. Sometimes it's an interview with, a prominent producer or songwriter or person in the industry. Sometimes it's answering questions that readers send in, some of which are crazy.
Give me what's a crazy question?
Let's see. I mean, I get a lot of good questions.
You can think about, I think music fans are about as educated as any other type of fan, like way more educated than average sports fans. What do you think about that? Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, I mean, people that are fans of things are usually they're usually pretty deep in it, especially people that love music. They know the studio musician who was playing on whatever song it was.
Like you could be a Jets or Giants fan, and you don't have to know a whole lot about it. But when you're a fan of an artist, you're probably listening to their stuff all the time. You're going to see them play, so you probably know a little bit more about them and their catalog.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we see at Audiomack, there are really two types of listeners. They're super passive listeners who just want to open the service and click play and let the service handle the rest. And then there are people who are going out and they want to pick every single song that they're listening to. We get both sides of that. And I think that's, there are a lot of really passionate music fans, though.
Why should we use Audiomack? I use Amazon Music. I have Spotify that I never use, so my Wrapped would probably be 3 songs. Why Audiomack?
So we build Audiomack as a very artist-centric platform. So on the artist side, we give you a lot of free tools to upload, your music directly to the platform to communicate with your fans. And because of that, we have a lot of releases that aren't available anywhere else, which is pretty cool for fans, especially if you're into the type of a lot of the music that we do have. On the listener side, we try to make it so you can have a more intimate relationship with the music that you follow. So, for example, again, if you follow an artist, we notify you every time that artist upload something or releases new music. It's also possible for artists to send messages to all their followers on the platform. So we like to think we have a more intimate music community and let you get closer to the artists than other platforms. We're different in the sense that we're not a full catalog service right now. So Amazon and Spotify, you could search up any release ever, and it's probably there. We focus on a specific subset of genres, though we've been expanding in other regions, other styles of music recently.
I think less options could be better. We talked about that. I enter a song and I get like 17 versions of that song.
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
It's too hard.
Yeah, totally.
Tell me your Mount Rushmore of music. You're not what you think are the greatest. Who are your personal favorites in music?
I'm a huge Springsteen fan, huge Bob Dylan fan. Um, I really like this band, the Gaslight Anthem. They're like a punkier band from New Jersey. I also, I mean, I also really like the Beatles. I mean, Springsteen, Dylan, and the Beatles are probably all up there for me. The fourth head on the mountain.
How did you get into that? Because you're a younger guy. I mean, even me, being older, that music was still before when I really started listening to
Yeah. Springsteen, my dad's a big Springsteen fan. So I definitely inherited that from him. I
I
don't
saw them play with fun, top five concerts in my life.
really.
Yeah, give me a top concert that you've seen. It doesn't have to be your favorite. Something top three, top five concert that just burns in your mind.
Yeah, a couple in September, there was this music festival in Asbury Park on the beach. Yes, See Here Now. And the big headliner, there were a lot of great acts there. Norah Jones played, Kool and the Gang played, Action Bronson played. Actually, Trey Anastasio from Fish played, but the big headliner was Springsteen. And it was just a really special show. I mean, him and the band sounded great, but it was like, that was Asbury Park was sort of where he first started his career. The show was on the beach. It was like perfect weather. You're standing like 10 feet from the ocean, just like this lush sea breeze blowing over you, and you're standing among,
That's
I don't know.
I've heard very good things about that. I haven't been. My brother saw Foo Fighters at See Here Now.
Okay.
Another
It's a really cool festival. And that particular set was unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, there's this band called St. Paul and the Broken Bones. They're like
so good live.
okay, so
Unbelievable.
yeah, I saw them. I worked at the radio station at my college, and we would get free tickets to like small venues around the city. So I saw they were playing, and this was like maybe right after their first record came out. And I was like, oh, I know a song or two. I'll just go. It was a free ticket. This venue, it wasn't even a venue. It was like a bar. It maybe held 200 people. And the show was just absolutely electrifying. And then like they sort of blew up after that. Like 3 or 4 months later, they were opening for the Rolling Stones.
He's a great performer. I mean, he's just wild.
Yeah.
Andy Frasco.
What was that?
Andy Frasco.
I'm not familiar with
He's
him.
another guy, like a bar mitzvah. It's very similar to
Okay.
St. Paul in the type of, if you get the chance to see him live. But those are two examples of people. I don't really have a lot of their music on. I think their music's good, but I don't have a lot of their music on my phone. But you give me a live show for those guys, I'm in.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I actually just saw St. Paul again a couple weeks ago. Was much different experience. So they were playing at this place in Manhattan called the Blue Note Jazz Club, but it was like a seated show, and they were doing 2 shows a night for like 5 days. So it was it was much more intimate, and it was still cool, but the band was a little bit.
I don't know who I'd want to see a seated show for.
Yeah, I
me.
know it was a cool. I mean, it was a cool show because it was a cool experience because it was very different.
Yeah,
But
interesting.
he was sort of constrained a little because it's like this little room.
He wasn't rolling on the ground, kicking his shoes.
No.
Who haven't you seen that you would love to see that's still around?
Oasis is a big one. I would love to see them. Big country artist who I'm upset I never saw before he blew up. Zach Bryan. Now he's doing like stadiums, and the tickets are all super expensive. I feel like he's my big white whale right now. I'm a big fan of that band Bleachers you mentioned before, who features Jack Antonoff from the band Fun. They were my white whale band for a while. Another band I loved and for some reason never saw, and then they started getting much bigger.
Avril Lavigne is mine. She's coming to South Florida. That she's touring with Simple Plan. So I'm excited to finally see her.
I would love to see Simple Plan. My cousin's a big fan. He's seen them. I've never had the pleasure.
They play at Disney every year. You can go to Disney and see Simple Plan shows. So
Oh, that's
tell
funny.
them to get on down to Disney. What's your most prized music memorabilia possession? If you can only keep one thing, do you have anything like that?
Not really. I'm not really a big memorabilia guy. I have a couple nice guitars. I use them, so I don't. If they're not something you like hang on the wall, I play
A
them.
House on Fire, you're bringing that stuff out first.
Yes, the
After
guitars.
all the pets and humans.
Yeah, pets, loved ones, and guitars.
Yeah.
So I have a few of those. I'd definitely like to get out of the
There you go.
house that's burning down.
We're going to let you out of the wolf den with the same question everyone gets. You can spend 24 hours with anybody in the world, but they have to be alive and you can't be related to them. Who would you choose and what are you guys doing?
Good question. I think I would spend my time with I would love to meet Conan O'Brien.
Okay.
I I'm a huge Conan fan.
300 episodes. I think that's the first. That's a great pick. What are you guys doing?
I think we just go out for lunch or something. I think he's super funny. I think he's very intelligent. Love his podcast. I love everything he's done on TV. And I figure you would expect me to list some musicians, so I
I
should.
thought maybe he'd play, but that's good. Conan O'Brien is a great answer. But we think with enough power and influence and followers, we can maybe make some of this stuff happen for our guests. So we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But really appreciate your time here today. Sign up for the newsletter at can'tgetmuchhigher.com. Check out Audiomack and the music that they're streaming, and reach out to Chris with any data questions through the newsletter is probably the easiest way to find you, right? Or
Yeah, I'm one guy that's very easy to find online. On most, if you search my name, Chris Dalla Riva, I'll come up basically everywhere. So you should be able to find me. I'm not hiding.
there you go. Appreciate your time. Great, always great to chat about music from people who share different thoughts on music. It's good to talk to people who feel the same about it, but it's also good to talk to people who have a difference of opinion on music. And there's so much opinions and different tastes that people like. So great to chat with you. And we'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great night and do something good. Go listen to some good music. Thank you.
Thank you.